Donald, Joe told me he wants to make another Ben 10 tier list, but this time over the movies. You in?
Sure, Barack, I'm down.
All right, then, Joe's already on the call, so let's start the list. This time we'll go from oldest to newest, which puts Secrets of the Omnitrix up first. What tier should we put this movie in?
Easy S tier Obama. This movie perfectly expanded the Ben 10 universe while also providing an extremely compelling and fast-paced narrative.
Agreed. This movie is honestly perfect in my eyes. Let's go ahead and place it in the S tier.
Honestly, guys, and I hate to do this, but I gotta disagree. My ex reminds me too much of Nancy Pelosi for me to enjoy it.
Donald, what the fuck are you saying? How does my ex, a literal squid alien, remind you of Nancy Pelosi?
Yeah, Donald, what the fuck are you saying?
Okay, listen, hear me out, guys. When my ex revealed that she had printed her name on the back of the Omnitrix just because she didn't like her boss, I instantly remembered all the times Nancy would barge into the Oval Office while I was playing some Minecraft and try to force me to sign shit. She was such a bitch.
Okay, Donald, that's definitely the dumbest thing you've ever said, no cap. I'm putting Secrets of the Omnitrix into the S tier and moving on.
I don't know, Barack, I kind of see where Donald's coming from. Nancy Pelosi is kind of a bitch.
That has literally nothing to do with the movie, Joe.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Whatever, I'm not willing to die on this hill. Unlike Nancy Pelosi, I'm willing to compromise and move on.
Lol, good one, Donald.
Glad to see you two are getting along for once. Now let's talk about the first live-action Ben 10 movie. Which tier do you guys think it should go into?
I think this movie is honestly overhated. Sure, it's not as good as the show itself, but it's still enjoyable. I think the A tier is a good spot to place it into.
Shut up, Creepy Joe. The only reason you like this movie is because you like the child actors and want to sniff their hair?
Of course, right as I compliment them for getting along, they start arguing.
Donald, you literally went on live TV and said you'd fuck your daughter if she wasn't related to you. You've got no right to be calling me creepy.
Wow, Joe. I'm impressed that you managed to remember something that long ago. Finally started taking your dementia pills, didn't you?
I love how you didn't even try and deny the fact that you talked about fucking your own daughter on national television.
That's not even what I said, Sleepy. I said I'd date my daughter if she wasn't my daughter, not that I'd fuck her.
Donald, that actually is more creepy than saying you'd fuck her.
Gentlemen, please, for the love of God, stop talking about how disgusting you are and focus on the movie.
Throw it into the D tier, Barack. It's a disgrace to this franchise and should never have been made.
All right, first up, I'd like to apologize for creeping you out so much, Barack. And secondly, I'd like to point out that this movie introduced Eon, who happens to be one of my favorite Ben 10 villains. On top of introducing him here, the movie also gave him a sympathetic and even understandable motivation of wanting to save his race. Plus, you cannot deny that the opening theme to this movie is a banger. So because of all that, I think this movie should go to the A tier.
Apology accepted, Joe, and I gotta say, you make a lot of good points. I personally don't think the story to this movie is all that good, nor do I think the special effects hold up that well, but hearing you talk about Eon and the incredible opening intro has made me feel like this movie should be placed into the B tier.
Thanks, Barack.
This is horseshit. This movie had some of the worst special effects I've ever seen, and the actor they chose for Grandpa Max looks worse than Sleepy Joe does.
Sorry, Donald, but I'm sticking with B tier for this one. Let's move on now to the second live-action movie.
Another day and yet another abuse of power by the Democrats.
All right, now what do you guys think of the second live-action Ben 10 movie, Ben 10 Alien Swarm? Personally, I think the effects are much better than the first movie, and the story was fairly decent. I'm thinking B tier. How about you, Joe?
I think B tier is fair Obama. Sure, this movie's villains weren't nearly as compelling or memorable as Eon was in the last one, but they still managed to be intimidating and forced the main cast to really problem solve and figure out what was really going on behind the scenes.
Well, all right then. Guess we can just put it into B tier then.
Oh, hell no. I'm not just going to sit here and let you Democrats rig this tier list like you did the last election.
You can't seriously still be mad about losing the election. It's been like 2 years, Donald. Just take the L already.
Fuck you, Joe. Everyone knows that shit was rigged, but that's besides the point. How the fuck does this live-action abomination possibly qualify for anything other than the D tier? It's literally the worst piece of cinema I've ever seen in my life.
Donald, could you please elaborate on that statement? How is this movie the worst piece of cinema you've ever seen before? You've literally watched Twilight before and called me up after you finished watching it with Melania and said it was amazing.
What, he actually said that?
Shut up, Joe. And to answer your question, Obama, the reason why I call this movie the worst piece of cinema I've ever seen before is because it has barely any interesting camera work going on. Its cast is boring and generic, and the way it undercuts its own interesting narrative by having the main villain be some random bug lady instead of one of Grandpa Max's former partners whose daughter is friends with Ben is pathetic. This easily could have become a super interesting, morally complex situation where Elena and Ben both have to choose whether or not they believe in what their respective parental figures are telling them and then have to butt heads over these differing beliefs. And also the story of the nanochips taking control is just a lazier version of the hybrid turning people into monsters.
Huh. You know, Donald, this has to be the first time I've ever been convinced by something you've said. Just for that, I'll put the movie into the C tier.
What? Oh, come on, Obama. You can't be that easily swayed by Donald's insane rants.
That's exactly what I say every time I hear one of your speeches, Sleepy Joe.
God, I can't wait till you go to jail.
Trust me, Joe, that ain't ever going to happen. But I will be coming back to the White House in 2024, so please make sure you clean up all the ice cream stains you left on the carpet.
Yeah, I'll be sure to have Melania clean those stains up right after she's done giving me some head.
The fuck did you just say about my wife, you decrepit fucking fossil?
Wow, now I see how Chris Wallace must have felt during that first debate.
Who's Chris Wallace?
The guy who moderated our first debate, dipshit.
Let's move on before you two throw another hissy fit.
Donald
Joe started it.
I can't believe people voted for you guys. Anyways, let's talk about the Generator Rex crossover episode. What tier do you guys think this should be placed under?
This crossover episode should be placed into the S tier. All this crossover really needed to be was Ben and Rex meeting up and fighting something together. Yet the writers took the extra step of creating a narrative based around that simple premise that furthers the story of Generator Rex as a whole by giving us even more lore about the nanite event and what the scientists were working on before it started. Speaking of which, Alpha is an incredible villain that manages to be menacing and sympathetic in a way no other villain on either show manages to be. Michael Emerson knocked it out of the park with this role.
You know, Joe, as much as I hate to say this, especially after what you just said you do to my wife, I must admit that I agree with you. This crossover episode was amazing. Ben especially was a lot less annoying here than what he's like on the show, and feels like an actual teenager for once. Put this masterpiece into the S tier, Obama.
Okay, guys, hear me out for a second.
Obama, don't tell me you actually dislike this crossover episode.
I'm sorry, Joe, but I do. It's well animated and very visually impressive, but honestly, I feel like this crossover undermines Ben too much. I mean, seriously, Ben has access to some of the most powerful aliens in his universe and can upgrade them into their ultimate form, but for most of this crossover, he's basically doing his best not to get beat up. It's even worse towards the end where Alpha just straight up hacks the Ultimatrix and turns it off, which basically sidelines Ben for the rest of the battle. Plus, the story here is kind of mid, in my opinion.
This take is worse than when you bombed the Middle East.
Shut the fuck up, Trump. I'm still pissed about you bringing that up at the end of the last video.
Yeah, well, guess what, Obama? I don't care. If you don't put this crossover into the S tier right now, I'm going to make the January 6th riots look like a fucking parade.
Oh shit, I think he means it, Barack. Put the crossover into the S tier quick, or else we'll both wish we were the ones bombed in Yemen.
All right, fine, I'll put the crossover into the S tier, but you two better stop with the drone strike jokes.
Okay, we'll do, man.
Now, I'll keep doing them.
Okay, then. Now let's talk about Destroy All Aliens. Personally, I think this movie should be in the A tier. It's a pretty well-written movie with some fun action and lots of nostalgic moments, but the CGI animation hasn't held up well, in my opinion.
I agree with you, Obama. It was really fun seeing the younger versions of Ben and Gwen again, and to see a lot of the original designs and voice actors return, but other than that, I don't really think this movie is that special, and honestly struggle to remember what happened in it.
Joe, you struggle to remember what year it is, and half the time you don't even remember your son's name. But for once, your forgetfulness makes sense. This movie is, in my opinion, a mediocre fan service movie designed to tug at the heartstrings of all the classic series, dick riders like you. Personally, I think this movie belongs in the C tier or B tier at the highest. But because you two decided to put the live-action movies in those tiers, I guess it can sit in the A tier, since it's nowhere near as bad as those movies were.
Oh, come on, Donald. This movie's not even that bad.
You're only saying that because you want 10-year-old Gwen to come and sit on your lap, Creepy Joe?
Donald, if you call me creepy one more time, I'm going to leak Epstein's entire flight logs to CNN.
Go ahead, Joe. Leak the flight logs. Just remember that Bill's on those things, too, and he doesn't take kindly to snitches like you.
Jesus Christ. That conversation took a dark-ass turn for the worst. Now, out of fear of being caught in the crossfire of this feud, I'd like you both to apologize to each other.
Sorry, Joe.
Me too, man. You'd know I'd never do that to you, bro. I know you just visited Epstein so you could try and hit on his wife.
Yeah, that's exactly why I visited the Island Joe. Totally no other reason at all.
I'm not even going to comment on that. I'm just going to put this movie in the A tier.
All right, now, before Donald talks about how much he hates the Ben 10 reboot, I just want to say that the reboot movie is a masterpiece and should be placed into the S tier without further discussion.
Wow, Joe, I don't know what's stupider. The fact that you thought that saying that would just magically shut me up and get Obama to place the movie in S tier, or the fact that you think this movie is worthy of the S tier to begin with.
Now, hold on a second, Donald. I actually really like this movie. It has a pretty cool premise of Vilgax framing Ben in order to get Kevin's anti-tricks. And the final battle between Alien V and Waybig honestly just feels like an even more epic version of the original Secrets of the Omnitrix finale.
Ha, see, Donald, Barack agrees with me. We're putting this movie into the S tier, baby.
Not while I'm still alive.
With how much McDonald's you eat, I doubt that will be much longer.
Look who's talking. Biden, you're so old a paper cut could kill you.
That didn't even make sense.
Just like how your economic policies do not make any friggin' sense to me. I mean, seriously, how much money are you planning to give to random college sorority girls? And what the fuck is up with the price of eggs? I wanted Melania to make me a ton of omelets one morning, but when I saw how high the price of eggs were, I just got some McMuffins instead.
It's called inflation, dumbass. And until your Republican pals in Congress let me pass some laws, it's only going to get worse.
Maybe if you had a backbone, they'd respect you enough to let you pass your stupid saving policies.
Will you two shut the fuck up and focus on the tier list? I swear you two argue more than Ben and Gwen did in the original Ben 10 series.
Like I said before, Barack, it's S tier.
D tier, the reboot sucks and is a shitty cash grab made for infants or people like Joe who have the brain of an infant.
Fuck it, I'm just putting it in the A tier and calling it a day.
This is worse than when Cervantes revealed Kevin's dad wasn't real.
Cervantes. Why does that name sound so familiar?
It's because he was one of the villains on the show that had the power to control minds, Joe.
He can control minds. Wait, then that means Cervantes, he caused the war in Ukraine. I remember now.
Joe, what the fuck are you saying?
I think his dementia pills finally wore off. Too bad he was doing so well today.
I remember he told me he took control of Putin, and I had to time travel with my partner Max Tennyson. He was always banging some alien chicks while I did all the hard work. I used my Biden blast to defeat Cervantes and trap him in the null void for good. But Putin was still under his control and still went through with the Ukraine war.
The President of the United States thinks he's in a fucking cartoon universe. You can't make this shit up. This country is fucking doomed.
Donald, I'm going to be honest with you. Even though Joe's a barely functioning senile old man who's currently rambling on about being in the Ben 10 universe, he's still a better president than you were. Like, I'd rather have a guy who pretends to be in a cartoon universe instead of a guy who tried to incite a revolt.
Oh, fuck you, Obama. I'm out of here.
Well, guess that's the end of the tier list. Joe, buddy, you okay?
And then I used the Biden blast to defeat Alien X alongside all the other Joe Bidens from alternate universes. But then the Alien X turned out to be an evil Joe Biden called Darth Brandon. He came from a universe where there was no ice cream and Trump ruled the world.
Okay, gonna have to text Michelle to make Jill give Joe his medicine. Well, guess that's all for today. Bye, Joe.
And then I fought the Galactic Gladiator and beat him up with the Biden blast. Huh, who's there? No, it can't be. Not you. Get away from me, Cervantes.
Now you're getting on my nerves. No!